My wife gave away my dog while I was at work, so I got him back, and left her the next day without saying goodbye. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and for a while, I thought I'd found my forever person. When I met Laura, she felt like sunlight after years of gray skies, bright, warm. She laughed easily, made friends everywhere, and told me she'd always dreamed of having a dog. I grew up with golden retrievers, so when we adopted Buddy, a rescued golden with eyes that looked like he'd seen too much sadness, it felt like the final piece of our perfect little puzzle. I remember the first night we brought him home. He curled up at the foot of our bed, his tail thumping softly against the sheets every time one of us spoke. I thought, this is it. This is what home feels like. The months that followed were almost cinematic. Morning walks where the sunrise painted the sky pink, Laura laughing as Buddy splashed through puddles. Quiet dinners where he'd nudge her hand for a treat and she'd pretend to scold him but still give in. Our weekends revolved around hiking trails and lazy movie nights with Buddy wedged between us. I used to catch myself thinking that life doesn't get better than this, but somewhere between the laughter and the comfort, little things started to change. Laura began sighing every time Buddy jumped on the couch. She started keeping lint rollers in every room, muttering about how much fur he shed. Once, while scrolling through her phone, she said, houses look so much cleaner without pets. I laughed it off, thinking she was joking, but her tone wasn't playful anymore. It was sharp, almost resentful. At night, when Buddy climbed into bed beside me, I noticed she'd turn her back, pulling the covers tighter. I tried to tell myself it was stress from work, maybe hormones, maybe just a phase. But deep down, something in her eyes had shifted from warmth to calculation. I should have known that was the first crack in our perfect life. It started small, so small I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Laura began skipping the morning walks, saying she was too tired or that her shoes were dirty. At first, I didn't think much of it. People change routines. But soon, I realized she wasn't just skipping walks. She was avoiding Buddy altogether. When I'd throw the ball in the yard, she'd sit inside scrolling on her phone, barely looking up. Once, I came back from the park and found her spraying air freshener around the living room, muttering about the wet dog smell. I tried to bring it up gently. You okay? You've seemed off lately, I asked one night while she stared blankly at the TV. She sighed and said, I didn't realize how much work a dog would be. He's everywhere, shedding, barking, needing attention. It's exhausting. I laughed nervously. That's kind of the deal with dogs, babe. Her head snapped toward me. You don't get it. You spend all your time with him. I feel like a third wheel in my own house. That one hit me harder than I expected. I'd always thought of Buddy as our dog, our family. But the way she said it, it felt like a warning. I tried to fix it, the only way I knew how, by doing more. I vacuumed twice a day, gave Buddy extra baths, even bought fancy odor-eliminating candles. Nothing changed. Her patience thinned like melting ice at dinner. She'd make small jabs. Maybe you should just marry the dog, or I swear he listens better than I do. They sounded like jokes at first, but her eyes didn't match her tone. They looked distant, cold. One night, I walked into the living room and saw her scrolling through an article titled "Why Living Without Pets Can Improve Your Relationship." She looked up, quickly, locking the screen. It's nothing, she said. But I knew, right then, something inside her was quietly breaking and she was dragging our family down with it. At first, I thought the tension would fade if I just gave her space, but the opposite happened. Laura's patience with Buddy evaporated overnight. One evening, I came home to find her standing over him with her hands on her hips, glaring as he wagged his tail. He chewed my slipper again, she said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. I picked up the ruined slipper, ready to apologize, but she snapped. You always make excuses for him. Maybe you love him more than me. I froze. It was such a childish thing to say, but the bitterness in her tone wasn't childish, it was venomous. I tried to de-escalate. He's a dog, Laura. He doesn't know any better. She rolled her eyes and stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door so hard Buddy whimpered. That night, he wouldn't leave my side. He curled up against me like he could sense something I couldn't quite admit, yet that the warmth in our house was slipping away. The next few weeks became a quiet war. Laura refused to feed Buddy if I wasn't home. She'd sigh loudly every time he barked, muttering, "Can't you shut him up?" The air inside the house grew heavy, like walking through tension itself. Even the light felt different, colder. I started staying longer at work, partly to avoid her, partly because coming home felt like walking into an argument waiting to happen. Then one night, I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low but edged with annoyance. I swear, if that dog wasn't here, we'd actually be happy. My heart dropped. I stood there in the hallway, not sure if I should confront her or pretend I hadn't heard. That's when it hit me Buddy wasn't just a pet she disliked. He'd become the scapegoat for everything wrong in our marriage, and she was starting to sound like she wanted to erase him completely. I tried to fix things, to breathe life back into what we had. I started planning little date stakeout on the porch, movie nights, surprise flowers on the counter. For a few days it seemed to work. Laura smiled again, laughed at my dumb jokes, even tossed Buddy a treat once or twice. I clung to that version of her, desperate to believe that the woman I married was still in there somewhere. It felt like we were finally finding our rhythm again, like maybe we could get through this storm. One Saturday morning, she leaned against the doorway as I tied my shoes for work and said softly, "You'll finally have a clean house today." I looked up, half smiling. "You cleaning while I'm gone?" She chuckled and kissed my cheek. Something like that. I didn't think twice. That was my first mistake. The day dragged on, but I remember feeling lighter, convinced the worst was behind us. I even bought Laura her favorite pastry on my way home, planning to surprise her with dessert after dinner. I opened the front door, expecting Buddy's usual rush of paws and joy, but silence hit me instead. No sound, no wagging tail, no thumping on the floorboards. The house felt wrong, like someone had taken the heartbeat out of it. "Buddy," my voice cracked the quiet. I checked every room, kitchen, bedroom, backyard, but he was gone. His bed, leash, and toys gone too. Even his bowl had disappeared from its spot by the counter. I called Laura, my chest tightening. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm, almost rehearsed. "Hey, you're home already. Where's Buddy?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. There was a long pause, then she sighed. "I told you we needed a cleaner house." The world tilted. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. That's when it hit me, whatever she'd done, it wasn't a fight anymore. It was betrayal. Her voice still echoed in my head long after I hung up the phone. We needed a cleaner house. That was all she said. If Buddy was some clutter, she'd tidied away. My hands were shaking when I called her back, my words breaking between breaths. "Laura, where is he? Tell me where he is." She sighed like I was overreacting. "Relax, he's fine. I gave him to a nice family who actually has time for him." The world went silent. I couldn't even find words at first, just that crushing emptiness in my chest. I finally managed. She spoke slowly, like she was explaining something logical to a child. "You're never home, and when you are, you're obsessed with that dog." I did what was best for both of us. Both of us? I remember staring at Buddy's empty bed as she said it. The indentation of his body still there, like he might come running back if I just waited long enough. I shouted into the phone, "You had no right." She stayed quiet for a second, then said coldly, "I'm your wife. I had every right to make a decision for our marriage." Then she hung up. I tore through the house, looking for anything. His collar, his toys, even his fur on the couch. Everything was gone. She'd cleaned the house like he'd never existed. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried until my throat burned. The silence around me was unbearable, like the house itself had turned against me. I called every shelter within 50 miles. Nothing. I posted online, begged people for help, even shared photos with trembling hands. By midnight, I was still scrolling, still hoping, still dying inside. That night, I slept by the door, half expecting to hear his paws. But there was nothing, just the memory of a home that wasn't home anymore. The next morning, I woke up on the cold floor with my phone still in my hand. 30 missed calls to shelters, rescue groups, even animal hospitals. I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. Every second that passed felt like Buddy was getting farther away. When I finally reached one shelter, the woman on the phone told me gently, "Sir, if your wife gave him away privately, there's not much we can do." That sentence nearly broke me. Privately, like he was a piece of furniture she'd sold behind my back by noon. I was driving aimlessly, stopping at every pet adoption center I could find. I showed them his picture, my voice cracking every time I said his name. Please, he's a golden retriever, 4 years old, a small scar above his paw. His name's Buddy, he answers when you call. Some people promised to check their logs. Others just gave me sympathetic smiles. By the time I came home, I'd burned half a tank of gas and all the hope I had left. When Laura came home that night, she looked at me like I was the one who'd lost my mind. "You've been gone all day," she said flatly. "Looking for my dog," I shot back. "Our dog," she corrected, crossing her arms. "And I told you, he's fine. I found him a family who actually knows how to raise a pet." The rage in me was cold, not hot. "You gave away my best friend without even telling me," she scoffed. "You're being dramatic. He was ruining our lives. You act like I killed someone." Something inside me cracked. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her and said, "You did." Her face twisted like she wanted to argue. That night, I sat on the porch, scrolling through my phone, eyes burning. And that's when I saw a notification, a reply to my desperate post. A stranger had messaged me, "I think we might have your dog," for the first time in days. My heart actually beat again. I stared at the message, rereading it like my brain didn't trust what my eyes were seeing. "I think we might have your dog." My hands shook as I typed back, trying to sound coherent. The sender's name was Melissa. She explained that her family had adopted a golden retriever from a woman named Laura who needed to rehome him quickly. My stomach twisted at that word, rehome. Like Buddy was a burden, not family. Melissa described him in detail: the scar above his paw, the slightly crooked tail, the way he carried his favorite toy in his mouth everywhere. I didn't even need the photos she sent, but when I saw them, I broke. It was Buddy, my buddy, sitting in a backyard, tail mid-wag, tongue out. Happy but confused, we arranged to meet the next morning. I barely slept that night, pacing the living room with the leash still clutched in my hand like a lifeline. I kept rehearsing what I'd say to him, but every version ended the same, with me crying. When I pulled up to Melissa's house, Buddy was already there in the yard, his head tilting like he recognized my car before I even stepped out. The moment he saw me, he bolted. His paws hit the ground hard, tail wagging so fast it blurred. I dropped to my knees as he barreled into me, whining, licking, whining again. I couldn't breathe. It was like my heart had found its way home after being lost in the dark. I held him so tight I could feel his heart beat against mine. Melissa stood by the porch, wiping tears from her eyes. "We saw your post," she said softly. "When I heard your story, I couldn't keep him from you." I thanked her over and over, my voice cracking each time. As I loaded Buddy into the car, he turned once to look at her, then back at me, his tail tapping the seat like he was saying, "Let's go home." But as I started the engine, I realized home wasn't what it used to be, and I wasn't sure what I'd find waiting for me when I got there. When I pulled into the driveway, Buddy's tail thumped against the seat, his nose pressed to the window like he was excited to be home. But I wasn't. My stomach was twisted into a knot. The house didn't feel like a place of safety anymore. It felt like a battlefield I was walking back into, knowing the enemy was waiting inside. Laura was in the kitchen when I opened the door. She froze mid-sip of her coffee, eyes widening when she saw Buddy trot in beside me. "What the hell? How?" she stammered, her voice cracking between shock and anger. "I got him back," I said quietly, keeping my tone steady. "From the family you dumped him on." She set her mug down hard enough to crack it against the counter. "You went behind my back. You had no right." "No, right?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You gave away my dog without even telling me." "You lied, Laura." She started crying then, fast and messy, like she was trying to switch roles from aggressor to victim in an instant. "I was just trying to help us. You were obsessed with him. You never had time for me anymore. I thought if he was gone, we could finally fix us." "By betraying me," I said, voice trembling. "By taking away the one thing that never hurt me." She stepped forward, hands shaking. "You don't understand. I just know." "I do," I interrupted. "You couldn't stand not being the center of attention. You saw love and loyalty you couldn't control, and you destroyed it." Buddy pressed against my leg, letting out a low whine. And that sound cut through everything: the noise, the lies, the guilt. I looked at Laura, but all I saw was someone who'd already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just said, "You made your choice." And for the first time, I truly meant it. But as I walked past her toward the bedroom to pack a bag, she whispered something that stopped me cold. Something that told me this wasn't over yet. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it sliced through the room like a knife. "You'll regret this," she said. I froze mid-step, turning to face her. Her tears were gone. What stared back at me was cold, calculated fury. "You think walking out fixes anything? You're pathetic. You care more about that mutt than your wife." I didn't even respond. There was no point. Something in me had shut off completely. I just walked to the bedroom and started pulling clothes from drawers, shoving them into a duffel bag. Every sound felt amplified. The zipper, the creak of the floorboards, Buddy's low, uncertain whine. He kept following me from room to room like he was afraid I'd disappear again. Laura hovered in the doorway. "You're really doing this? After everything I've done for us?" I looked up, and for the first time, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw someone I couldn't recognize. "Everything you've done to us? You mean," she scoffed, crossing her arms, "you're overreacting. You always have been. Maybe that's why I did it, to never knew how to balance anything." I zipped the bag shut. You don't take away someone's family to make a point. I walked past her without another word. But before I could reach the door, I heard her mutter under her breath, "You'll come crawling back once you realize no one else will put up with you." That was my rock-bottom moment. Standing there, hearing the woman I once trusted reduce my love, my pain, and my loyalty to weakness. For years, I'd believed love meant forgiveness, understanding, second chances. But now I saw the truth. Love without respect is just captivity. I picked up Buddy's leash. "No," I said quietly. "I won't be crawling anywhere." And as Buddy and I stepped outside into the cold night air, the door closing behind us, I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of me finally taking my life back. I spent the night in a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that smelled faintly of bleach and regret. Buddy curled up beside me on the thin mattress, his head resting on my arm. For the first time in days, I felt the smallest flicker of peace, quiet, heavy, but real. The glow from the streetlight outside painted the walls in long, tired shadows, and I just lay there, listening to Buddy's breathing. I kept thinking, I finally did it. I finally walked away by morning. I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to fight her anymore. I wasn't going to argue, explain, or justify why I couldn't live with someone who thought love was disposable. I went back home one last time while she was still at work. The house felt like a museum of everything I'd once believed. In empty coffee mugs, framed photos, her perfume still hanging in the air. I didn't take much, just my clothes, a few personal things, and the documents that mattered. Before leaving, I walked into the living room and saw Buddy's old leash hook on the wall bare, the paint around it slightly discolored. I hung his leash back there for a moment just to see it again, then took it down. That small act felt like closing a chapter. I grabbed a notepad from the counter and wrote her one final message. "You gave away my best friend without asking, so I'm doing the same. I'm giving away my future with you." I left the key beside it, locked the door behind me, and didn't look back. As I drove away, Buddy rested his chin on the passenger seat, watching the world blur past. For the first time, I wasn't angry, just done. I wasn't leaving in rage, was leaving in clarity. But later that night, when her number flashed on my phone over and over, I realized she still wasn't finished trying to control the narrative, and part of me knew the final confrontation was still coming. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 20 missed calls, then 30. Then the messages started angry at first, then sad, then desperate. Asterisk, you can't just walk away from a marriage like this. Asterisk, you're being childish. Asterisk, please, let's talk. Each one made me feel less and less of anything. I sat on the couch of my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, staring at the screen until Buddy nudged my leg, reminding me that life was still moving, even if she couldn't let go. Hours later, there was a knock at the door. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know it was her. I opened it anyway. Laura stood there, mascara streaked, her voice trembling as she said, "Please, can we talk? I made a mistake." I let her in, not out of kindness, but because I wanted to hear it, to see if she'd finally understand what she'd done. She sat on the edge of the couch, wringing her hands, her words tumbling out fast. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought. If Buddy was gone, maybe we'd have space again. Maybe you'd see me. I stayed quiet, watching her crumble under the weight of her own excuses. You saw me, I finally said, my voice low. You just didn't like that my love didn't revolve around you. She looked up, eyes wet. So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away? I gestured toward Buddy, asleep on the floor beside us. You already did. For a long moment, we just sat there in silence, the kind that ends things. When she realized I wasn't changing my mind, her tears stopped. Her voice hardened again. You'll regret this, she said, standing up. I walked her to the door. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll regret it with peace. As she left, Buddy lifted his head, watching her go, then sighed and put it back down. That sound, the soft exhale of calm after chaos, was the first real proof that I'd made the right choice. But even then, I knew closure wouldn't come from walking a wit, would come from rebuilding what she tried to destroy. It's been 8 months since that day, and sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear Laura moving around the kitchen until Buddy jumps on the bed, reminding me that the only heartbeat I need in this apartment is his. The silence that once terrified me has turned into something peaceful, almost sacred. I don't rush through mornings anymore. I take Buddy on long walks through the park, and people smile when they see him. They don't know his story or mine, but they can feel the bond between us. There are still moments that sting, finding old photos buried in my phone, the memory of her laugh before things turned dark. But now, when those thoughts creep in, I don't feel bitterness, I feel distance, like it all happened in another life I've outgrown. Therapy helped, sure, but what really healed me was time and loyalty that never wavered. Buddy never judged, never demanded, never lied. He just stayed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I threw a tennis ball across the grass. Buddy chased it with the same reckless joy he always had. I watched him run, his golden fur catching the light, and for the first time, I didn't feel as I felt gratitude. It's gratitude that I got him back. Gratitude that I got myself back. I've learned something about love. It's not about control or sacrifice. It's about safety, trust, and freedom. Things I never truly had with her. When I think back now, I don't wonder what I could have done differently. I just remember the moment I walked out and how, for the first time in years, the air felt clean. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever get married again. I just smile and say, maybe someday. Then I glance down at Buddy trotting beside me and add, but for now, I'm with the one who never let me down. And that, after everything's the happiest ending I could have written.